Good morning, everybody. We'll call to order our January 15th, 2019 regular meeting of the Board of Mason County Commissioners. We'll begin with our Pledge of Allegiance, and Commissioner Netherland, if you would please lead us.
Be honored. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if the clerk would please take roll.
Commissioner District 1, Randy Netherland.
I'm here.
Commissioner District 2, Kevin Schutte.
Here.
Commissioner District 3, Sharon Trask. Here.
And moving on to item number 4, correspondence and organizational business. Item 4.1, correspondence. If the clerk would please report the correspondence.
Victoria Meadows sent in a letter concerning accrued sick leave payment. The Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board sent a liquor license application for Hood Canal Salmon Enhancement Group being held at the Salmon Center Barn at 600 Northeast Russell Road in Belfair. And Timberland Regional Library sent in their 2019 levy.
Very good, thank you. Move on to item number 5. This is our open forum for citizen input. It's an opportunity for members of the public to come forward and address the commission on items not on today's agenda. If you come to the podium, state your name and tell us where you live, Chair will recognize you. We have a 15-minute time limit on that. Not per person, but total 15-minute time limit, so I ask you to be respectful of other people that may want to speak as you are making your comments. So if you'd like to address us on items not on the agenda, please come forward and Chair will recognize you.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
It is my favorite time of the year coming up, tax season, and there's so much new stuff going on. We have, through AARP, an in-person tax prep service, and there's locations at the Belfair Library. That's on Tuesdays, every Tuesday in February, or starting in February through the end of tax season. At the Shelton Library, on every Saturday, February through the end of tax season, and then the Shelton Senior Center on Wednesdays. And the two at the library are drop-ins, but you need to call the Senior Center for an appointment. And the number up there is 360-426-4374. Come on in, and we know all the new tax laws, so we're covered there. So, any questions?
Any questions? Very good. Thank you, Cheryl. Appreciate it. Any other members of the audience for public comment? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item number 6. It's adoption of our agenda. Entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move for the adoption of the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda as presented. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the motion carries. Item number 7, approval of minutes, the meeting, January 8th, 2019 regular meeting minutes. Entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move for approval of the minutes, January 8th, 2019 regular meeting minutes.
A second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the January 8th, 2019 regular meeting minutes as presented. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Moving on to item number 8, approval of the action agenda. Commissioners will read through the items on today's action agenda, at which time commissioners and public may ask questions to determine whether or not they would like to have an item removed for a separate vote and discussion. We will read through them first, and then I'll open it up for that. Commissioner Trask, if you would please read item 8.1 through 8.3. Commissioner Netherland, 8.4 through 8.6. And I will read 8.7 through 8.10.
Approval to have the chair sign the USDA loan resolution and approval to have the clerk of the board certify the loan resolution for the Beards Cove water meter project in the amount of $107,400. This amount is in addition to the loan resolution the board passed in 2018 for $166,000. Approval of the 2019 Court Commissioners Professional Services Agreement with Robert Sauerlander for a salary of $117,348.28, or as increased by the Washington Citizens Commissioner on Salaries. Item 8.3, approval to adopt the resolution updating the Commissioner's operating guidelines.
Mr. Chair, item number 8.4, approval of warrants and treasurer's electronic remittance. Claims Clearing Fund, warrants number 8061865 through 8061904. The amount $72,098.41. Direct Deposit Fund, warrants number 55752 through 56113 for the amount of $664,423.06. Salary Clearing Fund, warrants number 7004144 through 7004182. The amount $950,639.71. Treasurer's electronic remittance for December 2018, $3,294,432.60. Item number 8.5, approval to reappoint Joshua Luck to the Veterans Advisory Board for a 2-year term ending January 15, 2021. Item number 8.6, approval to sign the bond resolution and approval to have the clerk of the board certify the resolution for the Beards Cove water meter project.
Item 8.7, approval to set a public hearing on February 5th, 2019 at 9:15 a.m. to consider a rezone request for parcel number 31929-32-00020 Kennedy Creek Quarry from Rural Residential 5, RR5, to Rural Natural Resource, RNR. Item 8.8, approval to set a public hearing on February 5th, 2019 at 9:15 a.m. to consider the annual update to the Capital Facilities Plan. Item 8.9, approval of subcontract funding from Division of Behavioral Health Resources, DBHR, contract number 2018-2019, number SA1 for Community Prevention and Wellness Initiative and Parenting Education Services in the amount of $40,000. And item 8.10, approval to nominate Abe Gardner to the Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Organization Advisory Board. Now that we have read through all the items on today's action agenda, are there any questions from the commission or items to be removed?
Matt? Sure. Were you comfortable with that last one? We had that briefing. Is that when you'd like
I have concerns about that.
So we'll take it off for a separate vote, and we'll have that, I'd like to have that one taken off, please.
Okay, so we'll remove item 8.10 for separate consideration. Commissioner Trask, any questions or items to be removed?
No.
Okay. Anybody in the public have questions on an item? Yes, sir.
Number 8.2, what are the potential services that this Robert Sauerlander is performing?
So he is in the therapeutic courts, so he acts as essentially a judge in the therapeutic courts, mental health court, drug court, veterans court, and so on and so forth. So the Superior Court appoints a commissioner to do that work. Does that, okay. Any, would you like it removed or?
No, just
Okay. Any other questions? Cheryl, did you have a question?
Yeah, 8.4, this treasurer electronic remittance for $3.2 million.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? Is it, it's not all payroll, is it?
Frank, do you have?
That is partial payroll, and then the other electronic payments, we have gotten to a point where we are doing electronic payments
Okay,
in addition to warrants.
okay, great.
Okay. Any other questions or items to be removed for a separate vote? Okay, hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move for approval of the action agenda as presented with the exception of 8.10 to be removed for a separate vote, please.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to approve today's action agenda as presented with the exception of item 8.10, which will be removed for a separate discussion and vote. Any additional discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the motion carries. Takes us to item 8.10, approval to nominate Abe Gardner to the Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Organization Advisory Board. And if you just give me 1 second, I'll have to, this is the downside of doing the internet, doing the online. I have to scroll all the way down to the,
I wouldn't know.
talk amongst yourselves.
The packet is linked. If you go back to your agenda, you can tap on 8.10.
Oh, really?
It'll take you down there. Yeah.
Well, how about that?
Waiting. That's some help.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So again, item 8.10, approval to nominate Abe Gardner to the Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Organization Advisory Board. As per the briefing document, so the Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Organization Advisory Board is the result of integration between the Thurston Mason Regional Support Network and Thurston Mason Chemical Dependency Advisory Boards. Integration between mental health and chemical dependency was a result of Senate Bill 6312. The advisory board is a citizen advisory board which represents the citizens of Thurston and Mason counties. The role of the advisory board is to advise the Thurston Mason BHO governing board on matters relating to mental health and substance use disorder services in Thurston and Mason counties. Each member is expected to represent all citizens of the two counties in their recommendations and advice. At this point, I would open this up for commissioner deliberation, and then we'll move to public comment.
For myself, I believe that our staff has a concern, and I wanted to bring that forward and see if we even needed to move this forward, table it, or just not have a motion if our staff makes a compelling argument. Being
Okay.
the director.
Commissioner Steve Wyndham, Director, Mason County Community Services. I just wanted to bring it to the Commission's attention that Abe Gardner is an employee of public health. So I'm just concerned that there would be a conflict of interest, an appearance of conflict of interest, because we do contracts. And so I'm just putting that out there that he's a great employee and certainly knows behavioral health and chemical dependency issues. I mean, Dave's our guy on that. I just want to make sure that the commission knows that he is a public health employee.
Okay. Dave, if I may, have you had a conversation with Abe?
I have not, and that's, I'm remiss on that, but we've been kind of running in different circles.
Okay.
Lydia, have you talked about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, please, Lydia.
So, I guess what I would say is he is an employee of the county, but he works with both counties. He's been very involved with the citizens of the communities, both communities. I think he'd be a great representative as a public, somebody that knows. I don't know about the conflict of interest because the money's funded in different directions, and I think it's just an advisory board, so I wouldn't have a problem with it personally, but.
Okay. Commissioner?
Are you uncomfortable with moving forward with it?
No, I just want to make sure that everything's on the table, so
Okay.
we have clear understanding here.
Okay. Commissioner Trask, any questions or comments?
No, I have no concerns.
Okay. Any comment from the public on item 8.10? Okay, hearing none, I'll move to a potential motion.
Mr. Chairman, hearing no objection from our director, I move to nominate Abe Gardner to the Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Organization Advisory Board.
I'll second.
It's moved and seconded to approve to nominate Abe Gardner to the Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Organization Advisory Board. Any additional discussion? Okay. I do have a couple quick comments to make that I think might help sort of alleviate some of those concerns. The advisory board reports to the governing board, which is comprised of 2 Thurston County commissioners and then a Mason County commissioner. In this case, this term will be me, and all the funding decisions are made through that. The advisory board is just that, it's an advisory board, and I think we have a great opportunity here to help increase our say in decisions that are being considered between the 2 counties, and certainly Abe brings a wealth of knowledge and experience in the behavioral health and substance use realm, and so I'm really happy to move this forward. I think if there is a conflict of interest, I think there are procedures and policies in place that members of that advisory board would have to declare those conflicts and abstain when appropriate from voting or recommendations. And as this moves forward, I would hold Abe to that same standard if those conflicts of interest did arise. So appreciate this moving forward. Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the motion carries. We'll move on to item number 9, other business. Any department heads or electeds looking to address the commission? Okay. We cannot yet move into our public hearing, which is set for 9:30 this morning. So without objection, I'd like to move on to item number 11, which is our board reports and calendar. Begin with Commissioner Netherland, followed by Commissioner Trask, and then myself.
Okay, let me just double check. All right, so Mason Transit pre-agenda meeting, I had my first meeting with Orca, had a meeting of the EDC. I met with two different individuals, two different organizations, groups that are looking to bring businesses to the North Mason region. And then I met again with some of their investors to look at some of the things and issues they would have to deal with to bring them here. But I think they were all pretty excited, some of the things we're doing, and I believe shortly we'll be announcing some more jobs, which I love. That, of course, we had our briefings. After this meeting, I'll be meeting with the undersheriff, which I want to say I really appreciate the sheriff's department's new policy of doing one-on-ones. I waited 6 years for that, and now lately that's how they've been doing business. When they have an issue, they come one-on-one, they talk about it, and I gotta say I really appreciate it and respect it. It has created a very good working atmosphere. Mason Transit Authority after this one. Let's see. Mount Moriah meeting, Temple Board meeting, Peninsula Regional Transportation Organization. Be meeting with some Kitsap electeds, and that will bring us back for the next week.
Thank you. Commissioner Trask?
Yesterday, I had the opportunity to meet with the Mason County Fire Chiefs Association and got to meet the chiefs. They're great people, and I look forward to working with them. I believe after this meeting, we have the League of Women Voters meeting at Olympic College. And then the Mason Transit meeting, I get to go on a tour first and then participate in the meeting. And tomorrow I'll be meeting with staff, and we also start up the Legislative Steering Committee meetings. So there's a reception tomorrow, or Wednesday night, tomorrow night. And then morning meetings from 8 to 1 at the Capitol. We also have a reception for the Weyerhaeuser Forest Production reception. And then Friday, I look forward to attending the Mason Shelton Chamber Gala.
Very good, thank you. Just a quick item from last week. We had our regular opioid stakeholders group meeting. We were able to meet at the Washington Correction Center out here in Shelton. Appreciate them hosting that. That is a tremendous facility that they have. I didn't take the tour this time. They did offer to take a tour. I had taken a tour a couple of years ago. And I'll tell you, it is quite a daunting facility, but appreciate them hosting our meeting. And the one big takeaway, I think, for everybody from that meeting and what we ought to be talking about in the community is last year we had 0 opioid overdose deaths in Mason County. Just a couple of years ago, we were 4th in the state, 1st per capita in opioid overdose deaths. That is due in large part to the partnerships that have been formed over the past year, and a tremendous amount of leadership from our public. For more than a year and has been very helpful in working with us in terms of getting money from the state and federal government in to do this opioid work. In the past year, we've received nearly $1 million in state and federal grants to go out and build programming that is effective. And I think in the early goings, we have to keep after it, we have to keep after it, but in the early goings, to go from being fourth in the state in opioid overdose deaths to 0 last year, I think it speaks to the tremendous amount of success and hard work that's coming out of our public health department. So I just wanted to make everybody aware of that. I think they're doing a fantastic job.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I apologize. The fuse just blew here, so we're not on anymore. We're no longer being recorded. So I need to go kick that back on and get the system going. So
Sure.
we're off the record at the moment.
Okay, so if everybody just sits tight, we'll break for a few minutes. All right, take 2.
Let's try this again.
Okay, so appreciate everybody's patience there as we figured out the issue. Unfortunately for you, I'll have to continue with my calendar now. As Commissioner Trask mentioned, I'll be attending the League of Women Voters meeting today. Then have a meeting with Christina Sanders from Washington State University's Department of Governmental Studies. They've been helping us put together a strategic planning process, and so she's going to be in town today to meet with us about the next steps there. Also have Mason Transit Authority, and then I'll be attending a retirement party tonight in Olympia for a longtime legislative assistant in the legislature who most recently worked for our representative Drew McEwen, Pam Schaefer. She, along with Representative McEwen, she worked in his district office here for the past year, and so we'll certainly be sad to see her go, but wish her all the best in her retirement. Later this week, I have the Criminal Justice Working Team meeting, our Housing and Behavioral Health Advisory Board, Hood Canal Coordinating Council, and then I'll also be attending the Washington Forest Products Association reception on Thursday evening, and the Shelton Mason Chamber Gala on Friday. And then that brings us back for briefings and our regular meeting next Tuesday. Okay, well, we still have not made it to 9:30, despite our best efforts.
I tried.
Might have to blow another fuse. So if everybody could just bear with us, we do have to wait until 9:30 to start the public hearing, and so I'm going to ask your indulgence. Without objection, I'd like to just break until 9:30. We have about a couple minutes here. We will now, since we've hit 9:30, move into item 10.1, public hearing to consider adopting a public benefit rating system in place of the current open space program. This is continued from December 18th, 2018 meeting, and I'd invite staff to come forward and brief on the updates.
Okay, Kel Rowan with Mason County Planning Staff. So at the December 18th meeting, Commissioner Drexler recommended some changes, which I made in the packet that I passed out. And the non-changes are from the November 20th Planning Advisory Commission recommendation to the board. I also have met with the new assessor. Patty McLean is now our new assessor. Her and I met last Friday, and we briefed with the board together yesterday. And I don't know what you want me to, what additional items?
So just kind of in summary of the meeting that we had yesterday with the assessor, it centered around the question of what is essentially the purpose of adopting the PBRS? Is it, and are there mechanisms within the current open space program that would allow for, that we aren't using currently in the county, that would help alleviate concerns that there are people who are not compliant with open space, with their open space agreement, and addressing that before we go and move into a wholesale policy change along the lines of a PBRS. And so the discussion that we had with the assessor yesterday was she was very interested in going through the current open space enrollees and auditing the program to see if there's any instances of misuse of the program, or if there are people who are in it who no longer are eligible to be in it because of changes that they made to their property, and so on and so forth. And so the commission discussed yesterday putting a pause on considering the PBRS for a period of about 6 months to allow the assessor to go through the program and evaluate it, without making a change to this PBRS as it is now. So that is also on the table for consideration for us today. We don't have just the choice of adopting or not adopting the PAC version, or adopting or not adopting the December 18th amended version with former Commissioner Drexler's amendments. We also have and have discussed at length yesterday with the assessor a third option, which is evaluating the current program to ensure compliance, and then making a decision to see if, you know, if what we currently have is effective, and we just weren't, you know, doing everything on our end to ensure compliance, or if we need to move in a different direction policy-wise, namely the PBRS. I think that kind of captures the details of that. Commissioner Netherland, do you have any?
Just to understand that this is actually something new for us, because the new assessor was willing to step up and do that. That wasn't an option that we had, but she looked at this a little bit differently, and I believe she took it as her responsibility to help us to make the best decisions possible by stepping up and getting her staff to step forward. Mm-hmm. And I very much appreciated it, and it was a great thing for her to come in and have that discussion with us.
Commissioner Trask, any comments?
I just enjoyed the conversation that went back and forth yesterday, the discussions that we had, and thought that this was a very good idea to push it back.
Okay, so having kind of established the conversation yesterday with the assessor, are there any questions from the commission for staff? Okay, any questions, not comments, for staff from the audience? Sir?
Just for clarification, you're saying that you're actually looking at tabling this for 6 months to evaluate it, and that's more your inclination at this particular time? So any comments we have here today, if we are, would be moot or not? Or would you take those into consideration along with your evaluations?
I speak only for myself. If you have comments, I'm more than happy to listen to them today. That's why we're having the public hearing. But it was important to establish that there is a third option that we're considering after speaking with Patty McLean, our assessor. So your comments can be directed towards either of the two proposals that have been on the table since December. If you have comments about us considering the third option and tabling this for 6 months or whatever, and then revisiting it after the assessors had a chance to assess evaluate the program, you can make comments to that as well.
And during follow-up, during the evaluation that the assessor's doing, is there going to be any public input that the assessor will get from the constituents?
That would happen today, right?
Well, I mean, I don't want to speak for the assessor, who's independently elected and I'm sure is always open to having communications with her constituents. So if you feel the need to have a further conversation with the assessor, I'm sure. But I believe it would be our intent, if we were to table it for 6 months, to allow the assessor to do that work without our interference, so to speak, and then come back in a time frame that we establish and get a report back from the assessor, and then then we would, I would imagine, have to take public comment again to consider next steps. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay. Sir?
I just have a curiosity question. Last month it was brought up that there was 300 people involved in this. That was quickly corrected to 300 parcels. I think it's 315 parcels, but it never was brought up exactly how many people are involved. How many landowners?
I don't know, and that's a question I'd have to ask the assessors. How many people?
Also, 2 people in the last month have told me that, and I don't believe this, but they've told me that land that's classified as timberland is not subject to this. Is that true?
Farm agriculture, according to the Department of Revenue, who I spoke to for quite some time, farmland, agriculture, and forestry are not eligible for the PBRS.
What does that mean?
Correct. There's 3 different programs. One is designated forest lands.
Which is what mine mostly is.
Okay,
that's what-
so that's not
not
subject to
affected.
that would not be affected. Then there's farm and ag.
No further questions.
There's farm and ag
Well, I
lands,
do
and then
have
there's
20
open
acres under
space.
agricultural land, so I would be affected.
What's that?
I have 20 acres under agricultural land, that would be affected.
For
What is
property,
affected?
okay, there are 3 different programs: designated forest land, farm and agriculture land, and open space. Farm and ag land, as I understand it, the assessors reevaluated their farm and ag properties, and those that did not qualify any longer under farm and ag can qualify under the open space program, and they may qualify under the new public benefit rating system as farm and ag conservation land if this were to pass, but they would also qualify under open space. Designated forest lands, I also understand from yesterday's briefing with the assessors and the commission, is that the assessors will be looking at reevaluating all the lands in designated forests, like they did farm and ag.
So there would be
And so
no-
now they're also willing to reevaluate those properties in open space.
So there would be no, I thought open space was an overall included there.
Nope, there's 3 programs.
Okay, so are you telling me that the forest land, designated forest land that I have will stay like it is
Correct.
under the PBRS?
Yes.
It would not be affected?
You would not be subject to PBRS or open space unless your forest lands say they reevaluate you and you no longer qualify.
That's not gonna be a problem.
You may qualify, just depending on what your property's like, it may qualify under
I
a
guess that's
different
why
program.
Diamond's not here.
Yeah, yeah.
Good
What's
point.
that? I
That's a
didn't-
good point. That's why Green Diamond's not here.
Or banking. All right, well, I didn't know, I didn't believe that, but I guess it's true.
Any other questions for staff? Sir?
Now, will we be notified in writing when this next meeting is, because that's very important, to get enough people here to see you?
We will, yes, since we're tabling it for that long, we will send out another letter to everyone in open space if we continue forward with a hearing on whether to transition to public benefit rating system.
Sounds like logical.
Yes.
To me, it sounds very logical.
Great. Sir?
Kettle, how many taxing districts are involved in Mason County?
Wow, that's a good question.
I have no idea. I'm sorry.
Well, it depends.
I,
It depends on where you're at, because in some areas you have a port district, some areas don't have a port district.
Well-
Different fire, all of those are, the school districts.
school.
Okay, well, I'll wait until I
Okay.
can have the floor.
Any other questions for staff? Yes.
Yeah, in one of the charts there was, saying what percentage is this and that, the word in their inholding land, and I'm not quite sure what that is. Is that something?
it's similar to a zoning designation. Mason County chose to use the term inholding for small parcels that do not qualify as long-term commercial forest. That's different than the assessor's designated forestry land. We have, in planning, we zone and designate lands, and one of the zoning districts is long-term commercial forest, and it has to be at least 80 acres in size. So for the smaller parcels that are within the long-term commercial forest, we call them inholding lands. So we, people can develop them typically residentially. There's a lot of properties out in the southwest side of the county where the majority of the inholding lands are located.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for staff? Okay, hearing none, we'll move into the public comment portion of our public hearing. If you'd like to make a comment on the proposals that we're considering, come forward to the podium. Chair will recognize you again. We do have those. Be mindful of everybody's time as you make comment. We want to get to as many of you as we can. And so just come forward and state your name for the record, and we'll go from there. Sure.
Good morning, Commissioner. My name is John Zimro. I live on the Clopalm Road. I have several questions that might be put forward not only to the commissioners, but to the assessor who has stepped up and taken on this very hard project. One, my first question is, PBRS has been an RCW since 1985, with changes going along the way. I'm wondering why Mason County has gone since 1985 with no problems, and now all of a sudden we're looking at the PBRS. That would be one of my questions. The other one is, how many counties in the state of Washington are under the PBRS statute? And I've already asked the one of Kel of how many taxing districts there are involved with the PBRS. My other question would be, what are the rates for each one of those taxing districts in the PBRS proposal? I talked to Department of Revenue, and they advised me that what we're not paying on taxes in open space is distributed within those taxing districts for the percentage of those taxing districts, including us that are on open space. So we're actually getting part of that distribution of what we're not paying. So when our taxes are lowered, it's distributed amongst the people in the tax district, which is also us. So if you're distributing for the taxes I'm not paying, you're distributing also to me. Not just those people that aren't in open space, but it's a whole pie. They don't look at anything. They just say, this is what your percentage is, this is what the people in that taxing district pay. So I would like answers to those questions also. And the other one would be, Kel, how many open spaces are in each district, taxing district?
Are you getting those, Kel, right, those questions?
I'm not sure I understand, but I may be able to work with Patty on that.
Well, this was explained to me by Department of Revenue of how what I'm not paying is distributed to the rest of the people in the county. And their basic question or answer to me was, well, it's all according what the district is and what the percentage of that district is. So I was a little confused when I was talking to him also. I'm just relaying what Department of Revenue has said to me. And we've already addressed it that the farm and forestry are not part of PBRS. Getting back to the 300 and some parcels that are in open space, is the assessor going to reevaluate all open spaces as far as you said there was 100 plus that didn't qualify or meet the, that's the way I understood it on the last meeting from last month.
That 100 plus
did not meet the qualifications under the old statute.
That I do not know.
Okay.
No, I only looked at a very, very small number, and only 1 out of the 9 didn't qualify, but I can't speak to the 300, whether they may all qualify,
Okay.
but the one I have.
And the assessor is going to look at that,
But the assessor will
reevaluate all
look
the
at as
open
many as
spaces.
she can in the 6 months.
Okay. Okay, that is all the questions I have as far as PBRS is concerned.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else for public comment? Sir. I'll get to you in a second.
My name is Terry Hogan. I live on Harstein Island. And Commissioner Drexler moved to strike several items on the current one. Hopefully, the evaluation within 6 months, if you guys decide to go that way, we'll be able to put more input and people will hear more input from different individuals. But at present, on Harstein Island, they've been doing quite a bit of logging. And granted, it's mostly Mankey and some other individuals, but I have 8.5 acres, and to the west of me is 40 acres. This logged is down to nothing. It's going to take 10, 15 years before it grows back up. And granted, that's great, but it really looks like hell. And to the north of me, they did 5 acres there. And I'm really urge that you do not get rid of this rural open space if you actually end up going with the particular plan that you have proposed. That's one item. Also, she said something about, and this is all in 17.18.35, that was before for rural open, and the same number with number 6 for wetlands. A lot of people that have small acreages and some of those wetlands, they don't get to use it for anything other than be wetlands. So it would be in my interest or in our interest to let those people not be taxed for something they can't really use and leave it as it is, and they're mandated to do that also. And then also on 17.18.35C, they wanted, Terry mentioned about going from a 5-acre minimum to a 10-acre minimum. Well, there's a lot of 5-acre minimums that was been mandated by the Growth Management Act that people have to have minimum 5 acres and they can't break it down. So there's a lot of people out there that might benefit from still having 5 acres. So I urge you not to change that either. And that is all of the comments I think I have.
Thank you.
But I also have it at my place. In 8.5 acres, I got about maybe 1/4 of it has buildings on it, and the rest I don't want to mess with. I want to leave it natural. And since they did logging, I've lost like several trees because it's to the southwest of me. And when we get wind coming through, my trees come down. There's nothing to block it now. So that's something that might take into consideration.
Thank you. Sir.
No, he's staff. He beat you out there.
Okay. First off, I'd like to congratulate Commissioner Trest on her position.
Thank you.
Sue and I were very pleased to vote for you, and it looks like several other people agreed on your position, so congratulations.
Thank you.
I came in loaded for bear today. I had some serious disagreements. I think they're valid. I think they're worth being heard. I wrote email letters to you three. I hope you got them. I have copies for you. Well, but one of the things I'm going to just kind of back off a bit here, considering you've taken a good step forward, I think, a very wise and sensible step forward. And I hope that this will go back to where it worked so well for so many years. There are also, within the structure at the assessor's office, there was more to the wording than is actually shown in my agreement here. I have my agreement. And there's a lot more wording to it. There was a lot more thought to it, where we have homes on the property, where we were allowed an acre of development. And also, when we had a boots on the ground inspection, we did not have a flyover from a Google map. So to be approved, we have boots on the ground. The inspector wandered through my whole property, and we discussed where we were. Also, I was told that within that acre, if there is any other development in the place, we were allowed to develop within 1 acre, because anything we developed within that other areas was now completely taxable under the 1 acre taxation. So those are all kinds of different things, and roads were allowed, Trails were allowed, access was allowed, the same as they are for timber and through ag. We weren't limited through, the new program showed no trails, just don't touch anything. The red flag for me here, and I want to get you all on to doing this so I can go home too. The red flag though to doing this to me was at the last meeting, there was two things. One of them, the outgoing commissioner of District 3 had a lot to talk about. And one of the things she put out was that, oh my God, there's no tax. Look at Mason, poor people in Mason County, we haven't got any tax money. We haven't got any tax base. Look at it, it's all federal, private, it's all federal or state land around us. We have only a small percentage of it. So that made me nervous considering the thought of, well, we're not here to try to develop more tax money by removing you from open space, now, which we all kind of think is what's going on to us. Now, so that's going to be an issue we hopefully don't have to face in the future. But one of the interesting things that I didn't look at the new copy, I have a new copy here of this, was the removal again of wetlands. Now, before that, open space is open space. We took a look at our property and said, this is open space. Now, I have a lot of wetlands on my property. Now, in other words, we were already given a count number, a number of points. Wow, a point system. Where we were never going to be able to reach where we were to begin with. Which the original agreements gave us. Agreements. Now, we agreed, and there's all through here, there's all kind of notifications in here that's in my agreement that if I don't do something, something's going to happen to me. Well, then we go over to the wetland thing, and so immediately you all agreed to strike and go to another day on agreeing to this PBS program, or what the hell ever it is, to remove wetlands. Now there were more points lost. So we were never ever going, we were about 35% lower than we could ever reach on the original program we had agreements to. And now you're taking more points. So in other words, the goalposts are being moved here. So when we have a program like this, and it's malleable, so malleable that you guys can do the moving, and we can't do diddly about it. And yet we have an agreement with you, which binds us to you. So in English common law, which is what our basically we're based on, if I have an offer, and I make an acceptance, that's a contract. Now we go back in here and there's a little word at the end of this whole thing that says, this is not a contract. Well, if it's got stripes on it, it smells bad, it's probably a skunk. So if you have an offer and an acceptance and an exchange of money, we paid you $250 a parcel. So if we have an exchange of funds and an offer and an acceptance and signed by a commissioner accepting that offer, so even though that little word in there says no contract, I kind of have a venture guess that you put this across the street in Superior Court, they're going to say, you know, folks, you got a contract. I would venture on that one. So, I don't want to go into this anymore. I want to get you folks a chance to get at this. I so damn wound up, you're going to get something out of me. I wasn't just going to sit there and quiver, because if I blow up, they're going to have all my ideas stuck to the ceiling, dripping down, and it's going to be ugly. But, please, as you work through this with the assessor, be aware that your predecessors over here on the wall that set this program in place, and it's been working well. It's been working extremely well. In your letter to you, I said, where are the village people standing beating at your door with pitchforks and flames, telling you get rid of the open space program? They're not there. Where are the people here saying get rid of the open space program? They're not here. It ain't broke, folks. It just isn't broke. Now you've got a whole lot more important things to do than to beat to death on something that isn't there. And the other thing is, we don't need to put staff up, increase staff in any way, shape, or form to do this. This program was put together in the assessor's office. We haven't, one of their staff was assigned to this program and also to do appraisals. They took care of this. We didn't have to volley this over in the building department or any other department, which now costs us more money. And again, why? Well, it looks to me like it's got to be funds. So, having said my piece, and you threw a monkey wrench at me, my song and dance was I was going to have to exit ledge right here, stage right, but you pulled the rug out from underneath by going forward doing the right thing. And I thank you for it.
Very good, thank you.
Okay.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ken Van Busker. I live on the Davis Farm Road in Belfair. I don't want to answer the gentleman's questions, but I know less than half the counties in the state use a PBRS program, and the last county to adopt it did it in 2007. That's quite a while ago. I attended the briefing yesterday, and I want to thank the board. I also want to thank all the citizens who have testified for the last 2 years about this ordinance before both the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners. It's my firm belief that the open space program is working, and it's worked well for many years. And I want to publicly correct the notion and the false fears that the public might have that folks in the current use program or any other tax shift program are not paying their fair share of the taxes. When we applied to be in the programs, the tax shift programs, the Board of County Commissioners, those folks up there, approved or denied those applications. The tax shift that was granted, that's the first criteria those Board of County Commissioners had to consider when they considered either approving or denying those applications. We gave up our development rights and signed an agreement with the county. We, like everyone else, pay that tax shift on the portion of our properties that are developed. The tax shifts for open space, farm and agriculture, senior programs are minuscule compared to the tax shift for long-term forestry. Again, I'd like to commend the board for doing the right thing by tabling this ordinance, and I'd like to see it put on the shelf and gather dust. And I also like to commend you for working with the assessor and with your constituents. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Pat?
I have a question.
We're in public comment.
I have a public comment.
Okay, and she's coming up, and then we'll get to you.
Patricia Vandy, I live 111 Southeast Euclid Place. This act, I had never heard of this before, and I was totally surprised about finding about it. The thing that I'm upset about, and I'm one of the odd ones out, is that I'm not involved in this because I don't have any property that I can leave for open space. But I found out I have a list of the number of properties that are involved in it, and it's 310 properties. 29 of them are commercial. I'm not certain if that's totally true because it's kind of hard to tell from the way these are listed here with the names and that, if they're all, you know, what I had picked out on here was actually commercial or not. But I don't think that it's right that the people that cannot take the benefit of this, if I understand this correctly, are the ones that are going to be making up the difference, because the county cannot afford to lose the revenue that they wouldn't be getting from this. So why is that coming back on us to have that reassessed, and that we're going to be paying more on it? I think that before, and I'm glad that this is being shelved and it's going to be thought over more carefully, but I think that everybody in the county should be made aware somehow or another of this going on and what's happening. Because a lot of people, you know, they're so busy with their regular lives, trying to make a living and working and taking care of children and a family and everything. They don't have time to find out about these meetings or come to them. They can't because they're working, or they're obligated in other ways. And I think that puts all these people that would have to be paying the difference on it at a disadvantage. And I think everybody should have a chance to make a comment on that, not just people that are involved in the problems and they're concerned about whether they're getting all the benefits that are you know, produced on this. So I don't know if you're interested, because you know, originally when you look at your tax returns before 2016, the only thing that it said on this, let's see. Oh, if application is approved and an agreement with Mason County is signed, a portion of the property taxes are deferred, not reduced or exempted, in exchange for having the use of the property remain as agreed. And then they changed that in 2016. It now says, in addition, as a way of it, to encourage commercial forestry in Washington State, qualifying landowners may choose to have their land designated as forest land, resulting in lower assessed value and lower taxes. And I don't, people even bother to look and see what it says on the back of these things. So I don't believe that everybody is educated on what's going on here, and I think there should be some way. I don't know if you put an article in the paper, have it written up so that people can read it, or somehow or another so that they know, because to me the devil is in the details, and it's sort of like robbing Peter to pay Paul, and I don't think that it's right, and I think that you know, something should be done about it. I don't know if you're interested in having this. I got this list from the assessor's office. Where is it? I have it here a minute ago. If you're interested, I could give you the list that they gave me that shows, you know, all of the names and the property and how much property it is.
We can.
Oh, here it is. So I don't know if you're interested in seeing that or not. No?
And we can get that from the assessor. You can hang on to your
Okay.
copy.
Well, just that you know.
Thank you.
But that's my comment on it. Thank you.
Okay. You wanted to comment, and then Monty.
That's a question, you don't go to the comment.
Just make sure you phrase your question in the form of a comment.
My name is Alfred Jones. I live in the Pickering area. It was brought up last month, and since nobody's brought it up yet, it was brought up last month about grandfathering. The meeting was kind of put on hold while you got a legal decision on that. You weren't sure if you could have two programs or not. I'm wondering whatever happened to that. Grandfathering, us and the new people would go under the PBRS.
Yeah, I would just say I don't think we have any more clarity on that now than we did last month.
To answer this lady's question, there's usually a public notice in the paper. There was not this time. I don't know why, but there's usually a public notice in the paper, which is all that's required by law, I believe, to notify the people, and then they have an opportunity to come in and testify as we are all here. So I'm not sure what her concerns are there, but, and I'm not sure why there was no public notice in the paper this over the last 4 weeks about this meeting. I called to find out why, and I was told that there was a notice on the website or something. I don't know how legal that is.
Okay. Commissioner, do you have a?
It's a continuance.
It's a continuance.
Because, we noticed it on our website and stuff also, but you don't really have to. It was a continuance of the other. We did all that things that were necessary by law.
I knew when it was because I was here last month, but I kept looking in the paper to find out what the time was. And
yeah.
I believe the Journal covered it as well.
I didn't see anything over the last month, since the last meeting in the Journal. But, I'm not sure. I'm still confused as to, I have 19 parcels under timberland or agricultural land. I'm not sure about this open space thing. I'm going to have to go upstairs, I guess, and see if I have land under that qualification. I thought open space was an overall, and then you put it under. So I don't know. I guess I'll go upstairs and find out up there exactly what these parcels are classified as.
And if you still want to meet with me afterwards, as you were saying during the break,
like to, what that's about.
I'd be more than happy to explain as much as I can.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Monty Ritter. I live at 538 Maple Street. I also have a 30-acre parcel that is enrolled in the Open Space Taxation Relief Program. I also have a 2.5-acre parcel and a 5-acre parcel that are not enrolled in the open space plan because it is difficult to remove your property from the plan without paying a huge penalty. So with respect, if I may, this is a survey from your Mason County Conservation District. And on the first page, you'll see I highlighted in yellow all the parts that actually pertain to my property. And you can still see that while I maintain my requirements to fulfill my participation in the Open Space Taxation Act, I'd like to say that over the last 20 years, Mason County, the neighborhood has developed. We've got the Growth Management Act, which creates places in Shelton that's supposed to develop. Because I would end up paying a 7-year penalty and 20% in order for me to withdraw my property and develop parts of it, because Mason County has built the Capitol Hill Road arterial to Johns Prairie Road. We have a new sewer pump station number 8 located right next to my property. I have the ability to do some development on my property, and after looking at this public benefit rating system, I can see that I can go ahead and requalify the portions of my property, which, as you might notice, have 4 different salmonoid species that inhabit it. I'd like to mention that in wanting to change from an Open Space Taxation Act, which lands qualifying for it, is specifically, is high priority open space, farm, agriculture, and timberland. Under the public benefit rating system, all of those are still a high priority. However, there are other properties allowed to take advantage of the public benefit rating system. I've counted over 40 properties, small properties, parcels, that would be allowed to be included in protecting the open space that I have, and the same ability by having smaller portions of their property included in saving the wetlands that I have. As I said, I own a couple parcels, and I'd like to be able to have those participate in the public benefit rating system, whereas it would be more difficult for me to do it, although possible, under the Open Space Taxation Act. With respect to the lady, I see she's not here, she mentioned that the open space, thank you, she mentioned the Open Space Taxation Act had no real way of allowing people to understand whether or not they would benefit from it. I'm rather impressed with the public benefit rating system, because in there, as it states here in its very beginning, is it has ways of outreach to eligible landowners. It has classifications that are easy for people to find out whether or not they would be able to benefit from small tax breaks under this system, because it's very clearly defined, and I like that. I have to say, with respect, and I know that you guys have a lot of people that probably want to talk to you, as a landowner who has property and has been in there for 49 years, I'd like to be able to remove it, and I'm allowed to do that if you do approve a public benefit rating system without having any penalties. This would encourage me, without the penalties that I would face otherwise, to develop the property I have, which is in the Shelton urban growth area. And I believe that is in the best interest of the state, which is how the Open Space Taxation Act is written. The act states that it is in the best interest of the state to maintain, preserve, and conserve. Under the new public benefit rating system, it says it's in the best interest of the county to put the public benefits, including not only open space, farm and ag, timberland, but it also has an interesting inclusion of recreation and trails. Specifically, by allowing people to enjoy contributing to the public benefit, by allowing parts of their property, which are not just fish passages, but human corridors. This system has laid out a method for people to reach out and voluntarily provide corridors through parcels of their land. These little tiny nuggets, these gold links in the public benefit rating system can accumulate under private ownership, until at which point it can be transferred to the state or to the county, and in doing so, at the right time, as we know, we are trying to create a trail from Belfair all the way to Shelton. We can do this under this plan because it allows people to contribute land, keep it in their own name in perpetuity for public use, and then at the very end, the public benefit says that these links can be given to the county at one time. We can use that as an RCO grant match, which means that instead of for the fiscal hawks who wonder how we could afford to pave a trail so long, which would cost millions, I would suggest that the public benefit rating system puts in place a method voluntarily allowing people to go for this benefit to the public without having without having the government tell us how to do it. It tells us it has to be a public contribution, not the government. And I think there's a lot of people who appreciate all the hard work the board has done for years. We have world-class parks. Every district has state-of-the-art facilities and the latest and greatest of turfs. And you guys have done the best jobs, but we don't have any trails. And we know that the only way we can, Commissioner Netherland, with respect to the board, you were there several years ago at a stakeholders meeting with the U.S. Navy. And while they, and Green Diamond, others, said they will not be the major contributor to a trail, it would allow us, if we would have sacrifices from the people of Mason County, if we add this together, they said we can use portions of their easement. Yeah, I'm sorry, I think that completed everything. I think I ended on the wrong note, but if there's any questions.
Thank you.
Nice to see you, Monty. It's been a while.
Any other public comment? Yes.
Nikki Zimro, and I'm on the Coquitlam Road, and I really get a feeling that the commission has backed off a little bit since our last meeting and is now more open-minded to other options. And I hope the assessor's office and the assessor gets word that we really appreciate her stepping forward and giving us another option. And my other comment is, if the wheel isn't broken, why fix it? And so I hope you will table this for 6 months, and I hope in your thoughts through this that possibly you'll consider that what has been working will continue to work. And I thank you all for your time.
Very good, thank you. Sir?
My name is Pat Binion, I live in the Hoodsport area. I've got just a couple of issues. First off, I would very much support the tabling of this issue pending the review of the assessor. The second is, it's always easier to measure compliance than it is to reboot and create a new policy from a cost standpoint, from a time standpoint, and from a clarity standpoint. The third thing is, we talked, there were questions at the meeting last month about how many dollars that we're talking about versus the total assessed values. I've not heard any comment about that. So has that been established, how many dollars we're talking, what the dollar amount is? Because by what I know, which is not a lot, I perceive we're talking in terms of fractions of pennies. You got 310 parcels with a reduced tax base based on the open space portion of this proposal versus the overall tax dollars for the county. This can't be a significant amount of money. This can't be an insignificant. This is an insignificant amount of money, and I suspect that you've already spent far in excess of what you think you're going to get by this redistribution, just in the process of going through having the planning department go through their analysis. I mean, it's ludicrous. We gain nothing. We lose a lot as a county. And all due respect to the gentleman who thinks that everybody's going to donate their property for trails, I don't think that's realistic. So, I mean, we're spending a lot of time and a lot of money on something that's going to generate very, very little in total absolute benefit. And if this is driven by compliance issues, deal with the compliance issues. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment, sir?
Hi, my name's Larry Gruber. There's a couple things I want to talk about. Most of them have been touched on. Most current was the financial part of it. This, as far as the county goes, the amount of this change is going to increase the tax that's paid on any of these parcels. And then you have to develop a certain amount of points, and it's still not achievable to get the same percentage of discount that you're getting on now on the portions that you have under discount. When you look at the entire picture, as far as the revenue difference to the county, like you said, it's basically insignificant, except to the people that are currently under open space. It is significant to them. Again, it's just a small number. Another point is to have this reevaluated. It was brought before in the December meeting that we looked at the parcels and used Google Earth to just look at 9 parcels or something like that. And from either place, if you look at the plat maps, they're all nice and flat. And if you look at Google Earth, it's flat unless you move the mouse around. But if you go stand on the parcel, it kind of looks like this. And so somebody has to come and actually look at it. So if the assessor is going to take the time to go look at this, this is going to be an overwhelming achievement trying to reassess these things. And it should only be done if they go and look at it actually, boots on the ground. One of the other things that have been brought up several times was the penalty. And as far as I'm concerned, that basically should be stricken out of there. Should do a Dexler on that line. And because if somebody's property is eligible for open space, and in the middle of their agricultural property decide to build a condo, well, the first thing they got to do is go get a building permit. Hence, their property value, they're going to be reassessed, so they're going to come out of open space or any kind of thing they're going to get. So to back up and penalize somebody isn't right, because the year before, yes, it was eligible for open space, but yet you're going to back up and charge them. No, you're going to back up and charge you so many years when all that you were actually eligible for it at the time. One of the other points, like I said, I think you brought it up, is the number of points that you get and all that, and it's going to be really hard to achieve the maximum amount of points. And one of the things that bothered me on the December meeting, I don't know if anybody, it bothered me personally, but Commissioner Drexler was talking, she commented that she had 2 parcels and she didn't mind paying her fair share of her taxes as she looked over her glasses and scanned the crowd. And I was really insulted by that. I mean, in other words, the reason we're here and talking about this is because we don't want to pay our taxes. That's not the case. We've got property that has major creek going through it. Some of the stuff is unusable land, been wetlands. In the case of mine, I have a creek, canyon, and it's property that can't be used, and I like to keep it under as low as tax base as possible. Some of the property that we have, I left not in open space, even though it's still steep and all that, and we can't use it because of the penalty again, where you can't take it out and you got to go back on the clutch years. We've been under this program since '07 is when this particular piece of property was put in, and I'd really like to keep it kind of where it's at. Been the problem, and again, the tax base as far as the county goes is insignificant, but it is significant to the people that are getting the break on the property that either they can't develop in something in that order. So that's kind of my basic concerns on this. And thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you much.
Any other people for public comment on this? Going once, twice. Okay, we will close the public comment portion of this and move back into commissioner deliberation and a potential motion. Commissioners?
I'll go over a few things and then we can get to the motion, I guess. There's a statement that I heard once. Would you rather be happy or right? It's a tough one. It was referred to when a husband and wife were arguing with each other. The doctor said to the man, which would you rather be, happy or right? But part of our job is to make sure that you understand certain things that are happening and to let you know which parts are inaccurate, which parts are correct. So I'm going to go over some of the statements and stuff that people have made just to let you know. First of all, I want to make really clear, I'm very much in favor of tabling this. That's not the question. As a matter of fact, we had some great conversations of it, and I want to again thank the assessor. People don't realize that that wasn't really an option before. Everybody's understaffed. They have to pick and choose what they can do. Because of Kel making that connection, bringing them down, this assessor has decided that this will be a priority, that they will take the time to look at it, especially in this area that they're working in now. So a very special thank you to them, because we did not have it. Let's see, John, I wanted to explain what they're trying to tell you is, and this goes for everybody, for those of you that think that the county gets some reward from this, it doesn't work that way. Our budget, when it is passed, that's the budget. That's the amount that gets proportioned to everybody. If you are in an open space situation, you pay 5 or 10% of what your normal amount would be. That rest amount, say it's $2,000, is spread over everybody else. What the Department of Revenue is trying to tell you is, in certain areas, like in the Shelton School District, they pay a much higher amount than they do up in the North Mason School District because of the things that have passed. So that amount that gets spread around is different everywhere. And it does affect yours. This is a long way around to say it, but if you're paying 10%, but it all gets reapportioned, so you may actually be paying 11% of the actual number. So it does affect even those that are not in it. Did that explain it good enough to what they were trying to tell you? The wetlands and whether your property's wetlands and the taxes, remember the assessor goes out and assesses your property on its highest and best value. If you can't use the property, if it's unusable, it has a lower value and that's what it gets assessed at. So there is a mechanism that takes care of that on properties as well. And so Ed, I wanted to make clear, there is an increase of staff work on our side. The funny thing is before it's on the assessor side, if something like this was to happen, it shifts it over to the planning side and stuff. So somebody's got to work on it either which way. There's no miracle involved here. It takes work to do all of it. Ken gave up developing rights. Yes and no. You don't give up your developing rights. You defer them to a future period. You and I both know, because we worked on some of the stuff with Hood Canal Courting Council, there are mechanisms that are allowed and are out there where you actually sign away your development rights forever on a piece of property. That's not what this is. That brings you back to the 7 years. When you agree to do it, you agree that you're going to get this tax break because you're not going to use those development rights. You're not giving them up, you're just telling the county you won't use them. You'll keep it in open space, you'll keep it nice, and because of that you get that tax break. If you decide to change your mind, then you have to pay the back taxes back 7 years. That's what that is, and that's why that has to be there, or you're not giving up anything. There is so much property in this county that nobody's building anything on. They have no intention of building anything on. They can't all just not pay tax because they don't want to build anything this week. So that's why this is a special program. As for being a contract or not being a contract, I want to remind you there is a provision in there, aside from what you mentioned, that also states that if the county the state or county is to end this, then you're not to be held responsible for those 7 years. So that's not an issue here, but I also want to remind you that also is a clause that says that it ends or it can end. Nothing lasts forever in a county law or code. The state can change it, the federal government can change it, and the county can change it any time. But it's a hope that you're able to continue in it. As Ed told me when he first talked to me a long time ago, this is a way of life. It's something he structured for his retirement, for his living, everything he did. He took it very serious, as you could hear when he came up here. This was not just a willy-nilly contract that he entered into. He was changing his life because of it. As for the penalty, Larry, it is a significant amount, the 7 years. But again, if we didn't have that, then they just choose to not pay taxes for this year. And that's not the same. That's not fair to everybody else. Because remember, everybody else is paying what doesn't get paid for. I want to remind you that there is no new income to the county by doing it. None. It can't happen. When we get our 1% at the end of the year, there's a number that is established. That number can't change, especially during the year. We do get other things such as new construction. We'll get that. We get sales tax, but that's not in your property tax. The property tax amount is established and can only go up 1%. Period. There's no other option for that. Well, unless we go through a vote of the people to have a levy lift or something like that. I want to make sure I get everybody. And Monty, I got to tell you, you hit some stuff I hadn't even thought about. There is some possibilities in some of the things that you had said there. But again, I want to remind you, on your 7 years, you've gotten the benefit of not paying those taxes for all those years. If you take it out, that's fair, unless it changes. I want to remind everybody, if something was to change and this new way of doing business was enacted, everybody's obligation to pay back that 7 years that's in the program, that goes away. You start fresh at that point. You reapply if you want or whatever. And as for being pennies overall, again, to the county, there is no pennies. There's no difference. I can understand to those that are in it, it could cost them $2,000 or even more, depending on how big the properties are that they would have to pay. Of that, there's no doubt. But with that being said, I went over everybody's comments on some of the issues that they hit on. So I apologize if I missed anybody, but I will be very supportive of moving forward with tabling this. And thank you again to the assessor for giving us an opportunity we did not have when we were looking at it earlier.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Trask, comments?
No.
I just try to keep this brief. So I think it really is important to note that, you know, that yesterday I think was kind of a watershed moment in considering the PBRS. To be able to collaborate effectively with the assessor on alternatives to this will ultimately benefit you and the open space program, as well as taxpayers in Mason County as a whole. So I think we've made a tremendous amount of progress on this in the past month since the last hearing, but in particular yesterday. And so I do want to echo Commissioner Netherland's gratitude to our new assessor, Patty McLean, for her willingness to work with us on this. If you recall my comments in December, I asked somewhat rhetorically, is the PBRS a solution in search of a problem? Well, now that we have an assessor on board with evaluating the program as it is, we're going to find that answer out. So maybe it wasn't as much of a rhetorical question as I maybe intended it to be at the time. So I too am supportive of tabling this for a period of time to evaluate the current program, to ensure compliance, because I think all of you who are here, and you give you the benefit of the doubt, you're all open space participants in good standing. You won't fear an audit because you're doing it the right way. But by going through this process, it'll help reaffirm that the program is working, or will show that it isn't. We need to consider some changes. And so I look forward to working collaboratively with the assessor on that, and hearing back later this year on how that worked out, and then at that point going back through this process to see what we do next, if anything. So I appreciate everybody coming out again today. I appreciate you continuing to be involved in this discussion, and look forward to working with all of you going forward. That being said, I would entertain a motion.
I'd like to move that we table the PBRS for 6 months to allow the assessor time to evaluate and give us information.
Mr. Chairman, I second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded to table the PBRS for 6 months to allow for more information from the assessor's office. Any additional discussion?
One further comment, Mr. Pat Binion. This gives us the opportunity to figure out whether we need to ensure compliance or whether we need to do a necessary rewrite. So I appreciate those words, because that is exactly what we're looking at.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Trask. Any additional comment?
No, I just appreciate everyone coming out today and sharing your opinions with us. I'm a woman of few words, but listening to everyone, you're helping educate me, so I appreciate that.
Very
Do we
good.
have a date for the follow-up?
Let me go to the calendar. And yeah, so 6 months. June. It would be June. I think 18th. July 16th.
Let me comment on that.
Please.
I do want to make clear that our assessor let us know that this is a target date, but she may need more time in order to do it, because she's actually doing a physical inventory of those properties that are in the Shelton area right now. That's where they're at. So they're going to be able to take inventory of that. Boots on the ground, as somebody said earlier. They're going to walk the properties, they're going to see it. So
if I might maybe make a suggestion, and we might maybe consider an alternative motion that provides a little bit more clarity. Perhaps we should consider tabling for 6 months, at which point the assessor would report to the commission within 6 months her findings on evaluating the program, and then from there we would go through the process of setting the next steps, as opposed to coming back to a public is essentially we're, as it is now, continuing this meeting for 6 months.
But she did agree she could come back, we would change it if we need to, we could just come,
Okay.
you know, because we have a motion a second, we can just come back and retable it for another month.
Fair enough. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? And the motion carries. With that, we'll close our public hearing and move on to item 12. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
And without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Just put 3:10.